This next speaker, James Felton Keith, come on up here. If you don't know James Felton Keith, you're about to. And I promise you, you have, I can't even imagine what you have in front of you based on what I already know about you. Very few people exist like you do. You're about to find out why. The intellect, the drive, the vision, the thought leadership, going back to the core of it, that is inside of you is something I'm excited to be a part of, and our organization is excited to be a part of as well. You have businesses, entrepreneurism expands multiple sectors. You have ideas, visions. I mean, I feel like anything I say about you to introduce you won't do you justice, so I'm going to let you take the floor. Put your hands together for James.
Thank you.
Felton Keith.
I'm actually pretty, emotional being here right now, listening to everybody else's talk. I kind of wanted to jump in about 8 or 9 times, talking about language and entrepreneurship and, getting to know yourself. I don't know where to start. I know I have some friends in the audience, but I only brought sunglasses today, so I can't see any of you right now. It's just like colorful blocks. But we can, I guess, I don't know, a little bit about me. I spend the majority of my time arguing with politicians and trade unions at the given moment, but I guess I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur as well. We can get into it, yeah. But I absolutely can't stand the word entrepreneurship. I'm so sorry. I can't stand the buzzword like entrepreneurship or innovation or anything like it. But I use it because it has a hell of a lot of context. So I identify as an entrepreneur. On top of being an engineer and an economist, at least by training, and more recently as an ethnographer. I spend the majority of my time, I have a portfolio of companies, kind of hearing out entrepreneurs about what they think is innovative and what sorts of products and services they think that they can implement into a variety of markets. This is us at the non-White House in the 4th annual White House Tech and LGBT Summit, because we weren't invited back this year in DC. But the core of my work, the majority of my work is really spent in corporate ethnography. I'm an ethnographer of technology. If you're not familiar, ethnography is an anthropological term to explain the study of culture. It's really difficult because tech is the kind of negative reciprocal of culture. Tech comes in 3 forms, and these are some of my babies. Hardware and software, I think we're all familiar with, like this iPad, but kind of the most pervasive sort of tech is methodologies. So language is a methodology, law is a methodology, and if you want to think about the oldest sorts of tech, there are things that you can touch, can't touch, and methodologies. So like fire is probably the oldest software, sticks are your oldest hardware, and language itself, or culture that stems from it, is our oldest methodology. So that's tech in a nutshell. Culture, though, is absolutely not a tech. That's why it's the most difficult thing to distribute. So the way we interact in this space, what Spire is doing by facilitating us right here, they are creating a culture, and we're all playing off of each other, we're learning from each other, we're developing common language, and we're trying to figure out how to distribute messages to each other as a result. I'm a technological determinist, and if you're not familiar with the term, it means that I think that tech drives culture, not the other way around. The opposite of me would be a social constructivist, which thinks, that society drives tech. It does not, because at the point that we created language, fire, and sticks, we've been on an exponential growth scale ever since. You can find this in all sorts of organizations, all sorts of environments. My environment of choice is the corporate space, and we can see sort of the change in culture happen over the course of the past 100 years in particular, based on how we deploy technologies to enhance our ability to communicate. But still, context is what's important in distributing our culture. So as we use other sorts of things to distribute technologies, the hardware, software, and methodologies of our lives, language and context is how we best distribute our culture so that we can understand and be willing to accept the technologies that we're distributing to each other. Branding is increasingly important. I think a lot of comments were made earlier about Twitter and how these micro messages are really gateways to the niches that we care about. The brands that you know and care about are the most suitable way to distribute whatever sort of tech is coming down the pipeline. When Uber came out, what they did that was really transformative is it was nothing technological, but they just told everybody this is a taxi on your phone. And people got into it. Now, ride sharing existed a long time before it, and we were talking about it in kind of wonky tech circles way before, but what Uber did was they solved the distribution problem. So as an engineer, I see everything as a distribution problem. All problems are a distribution problem. I'd love to argue some more, talk in more detail about that. Even the distribution of language and the distribution of culture. So a lot of people, they see this picture on my social media and they go, do you have a plane? I do not have a plane. My portfolio is slightly smaller than Jay-Z's, but these are some of the companies that I own a piece of. But when I tell them, I just use an app, it's like Uber for jets, they can dig it. They'll know that it's jet smarter, et cetera. But what I'm essentially doing is explaining to them from left to right that innovation, in the case of Uber, is really communicating a technology of tomorrow and a business model of today to a culture of yesterday. The most innovative companies, the best companies that distribute their stuff the best, they really hinge on harnessing a technology of tomorrow. This doesn't mean that they're doing something, like 3D printing human bodies or something, but they're using a tech that's, relatively on the edge. It hasn't been distributed well. It has less than 50 million users, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of interesting research around that. And they're putting in a business model of today. Lyft existed a long time before Uber, but they talked about ride sharing, which is not a thing. Taxis are a thing. It has context. We all know what a taxi is. That mustache is silly. But I use Lyft because I don't like the CEO of Uber right now. So they use the business model of today to really communicate to a culture of yesterday what was going on, just like these two guys do. And I agree and disagree with both of them on a lot of different things. But what they really did in the 1960s was they were able to communicate sweeping changes to their constituencies about what was coming. So they were really communicating to a culture of yesterday. Now, that's really the end of my spiel, but I want you to leave with three things. I want you to understand that tech comes in threes: software, hardware, and methodologies, things you can touch, things you can't touch, and processes. So any process is a methodology. And that all problems, are distribution problems. So if you're trying to figure out how to better distribute your business, whether it's a product or service or the communications around it, you want to really look at who is my target market and how might they better understand what I want to do with them. And then the last piece is that really innovative entrepreneurship, two words that I can't stand but are necessary, are using technologies of tomorrow and business models of today to communicate to cultures of yesterday. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions?
I'm sorry.
Sure.
I have questions, but I feel like I take them also good.
I'm curious from a media perspective, your line about how technology changes us instead of us changing the technology. Can you expand upon that a little bit?
Sure. So, excuse me.
I'm from the world of we used to type.
Yeah, I took typing class.
We
Yeah.
got a computer in the corner.
Yeah.
Now it's everywhere.
It is. I've been tweeting what they've been saying all morning. But I think, that sort of technology, for instance, I think one example is it's helped me better craft how I distribute messages, right? So I think in quotes. I really only started using Twitter to like my own quotes so that I can reference them, because I used to keep them on a page. I really used to keep them on my old Facebook, so anyone who's my Facebook friend, they can see a whole bunch of old quotes. But anyway, that tech has changed the way that I try to communicate with people. It's also changed the way that I distribute businesses. So for instance, one of my latest companies is called Slay TV, and we did some stuff earlier this week. When the product was brought to me, it was called Architect. It was big and heady and idealistic, et cetera. And I was like, I need one word or less than 2 syllables. Can you give me that? And can we communicate a culture right there? Because that niche is where the business opportunity is, not hanging out with everybody and trying to gather all the content we can. Netflix is not necessarily a good model for this group. So I was like, give me a word. Can it be a culture? And can we distribute that to people? And the content is kind of secondary, even though there's some great, great content on there. So anyway, I think it transforms our culture, how we use that distribution mechanism of that tech. And that tech is language, not the hardware and software piece. Yeah.
Can you tell them about Slay TV?
Oh, yeah. Slay TV is just a digital queer media network. We're a TV company. We have a web app and mobile apps, etc. We're everywhere. We're at slaytv.com or watchslay.tv. We have a very specific focus in these early stages on queer people of color globally. We're growing fastest in Johannesburg and the UK. Shocked the hell out of me when we start seeing the downloads, but those people want it. But also in places like Nebraska and Brooklyn and you name it. So that's Slay TV. And I'm happy to be a part of the project. I really only got it from, being a part of this network, being a part of this culture. I started at LGBT Chamber of Commerce in Michigan when I was working for the mayor and got fired for being too out the day after the Pride Parade. But as a business guy and a bisexual and being closeted, I really used the structure of business to muster the courage to come out. I was like, if I can't own a piece of this, like literally own a tangible institution, then I will not have the courage to tell my business peers that, I'm kissing my husband, on the weekends, who was just my boyfriend at the time. That's a bit of my truth. But anyway, so I'm using that skill set to do the thing. But in those networks and meeting people from the NGOCC, I met them before I went to Detroit. I came back, and some of the guys who introduced me to Slay, they were like, can you build this out? But it was all through this network. So I can see you all now because I have my glasses on. Sweet. Yeah, that happened. Yep.
So what's your beef with the word innovate?
I just don't like buzzwords. I'm a stickler for anything corny. I have like a general cool clause, and innovate is great, and entrepreneurship is great, but it's just not cool, And the word cool ain't cool anymore either. I'm, probably the oldest millennial on the planet, so some 20-year-old will be like, well, you're a loser. I'm like, well, you're right, I am. And I apologize, yeah, so that's all, yeah. Anything else? Oh,
Yeah.
hey.
So I know that you kicked off LGBT Week at your studio in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Are you planning on doing more things like that where you invite folks from the community to come and check out your wares and how to get engaged and involved and share to their followers what's that?
Yes, the team has all sorts of cool stuff planned where, they are going to make some more. We're definitely going to do an upfront every year because May is, if people aren't familiar, that's when TV networks do their upfronts anyway. But I think some of the series, they'll tour the country and do like regular TV nights, etc. But we are also looking to capture more stories like yours, for instance, and put those on display because a lot of our partnerships are with broadcast companies, city by city, who say, we've just been waiting for brown faces to exist in a space where we know where to go. So can we call you, fill a slot of these stories, whether it's scripted or non-scripted, et cetera. So the team is working to collect as much as they possibly can, as fast as they can. But yes, stuff will happen.
Thank you. I think that's it.
Yeah.
I'm horrible at times, so I'm going to go with him.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Thank you for being here.